Alright, so lesson 7. At this point, we should feel very competent solving linear equations. In many situations, we might even solve equations where there are no actual numbers given. So let's take a look at what we mean. So for both of these, I want you to pause and see if you can solve A for x. Alright, so to solve for x, you subtract 3 from each side. 5x equals 30, divide by 5, and x equals 6. So letter B is a little bit different. You can attempt this on your own, but we're trying to solve for x again, but we're going to do it in terms of x. So what we need to do is subtract b first. You'll notice that we now have a times x equals c minus b. Then divide by a, so x equals c minus b divided by a. If you were to do what we've done before, we'd look at what happened to x first. Well, the first thing that happened to x was it's multiplied by a, then added b. So what you would need to do to each side would be to subtract b, then divide by a, which you did here. You subtracted b and divided by a. All right, the rules for solving linear equations and all equations don't depend on whether the constants in the problem are specified or not. The biggest difference in number 1, so the ones we just did between A and B, is that in B you have to leave the results of the intermediate calculation undone, meaning that you're not going to have just a number for your answer. So first one, let's look at what's happening to x. The first thing that happens was added 5, then divided by 2, then minus 7. So first thing we're going to do is add 7. So now I have x plus 5 over 2 equals 10. Then we're going to multiply by 2. So x plus 5 equals 20. Then we're going to subtract 5. So x equals 15. We're going to do the same thing over here, except we are looking at just letters. So the first thing that happens to x was it added a, then divided by b, then subtracted c. So opposite in the opposite order. Instead of subtracting c, we're going to add c. So x plus a divided by b equals d plus c. Then we're going to multiply by b. So now we have x plus a equals b times d plus c, subtract a, and our answer is x equals b times d plus c minus a. Of course, we can have numbers we know thrown into the mix. The most important thing to do is to know when we can combine and produce a result and when we can't. So, when 2 times x minus h plus k equals 8, we need to solve for x in terms of h and k, meaning h and k will stay h and k. So let's look at x. The first thing that happened was subtracted h, then multiplied by 2, then added k. So we need to do the opposite in the opposite order. So I'm going to rewrite it. 2 times x minus h plus k equals 8. So the opposite in the opposite order. Instead of adding k, we're going to subtract k. So 2 times x minus h equals 8 minus k. Instead of multiplying by 2, we're going to divide by 2, which means we divide everything by 2. So we have x minus h equals 4 minus k divided by 2. Then instead of subtracting h, we're going to add h. So x equals 4 minus k divided by 2 plus h. Alright, so we're going to rearrange a formula to solve for a quantity of interest. So we're going to look at the perimeter. To find the perimeter, remember you add up all the sides. So if the rectangle has a length of 12 and width of 5, what's the value of its perimeter? Well, remember that the perimeter is 2 times the length, which is 12, plus 2 times of the width, which is 5. 2 times 12 is 24. 2 times 5 is 10. So 34 inches. Notice how we don't do inches squared because we did not multiply width times length, so we're not finding the area. So if you're looking at just the formula, perimeter is 2 times length plus 2 times width. So let's rearrange this formula so that it solves for the length. So we want to solve for L. So P equals 2 times L plus 2 times width. Well, the first thing that happens to the L is it's multiplied by 2, and the second thing that happens is 2W is multiplied by it. So we are going to first, or add it to it. So we need to subtract 2W from each side. So P minus 2W equals 2 times L. And instead of multiplying by 2, we're going to divide by 2. So P divided by 2 minus W equals L, because notice that 2 divided by 2 is 1. So there we are. But the next part of this question says, determine the value of L when P equals 20 and W equals 4. So if P equals 20 and W equals 4, what is L going to be? So we plugged 20 in for the P and 4 in for the W. So 20 divided by 2 is 10. So my length is 6. There's one last complication we need to look at that is often challenging for students at all levels. So let's consider the equation AX plus B equals CX plus D. We'd like to solve for X. So let's look at A first. We're going to solve for X. So we solve by getting the X on the same side. So 3x plus 1 equals 22. Then we're going to subtract 1 from each side. Sorry, we do the opposite. So 3x equals 21. Divide by 3 and x equals 7. That was simple. We had numbers to work with. So we're going to need to do the same thing. So the first thing we did here is we got the x's to the same side. So we're going to subtract cx from each side. So ax minus cx plus b equals d. Then the next thing that we did was we subtracted 1 from each side. So we're going to need to subtract b from each side. So ax minus cx equals d minus b. You'll notice that both of these have an x. So we can take out an x. And now I have a minus c. So we used the distributive property. We undid the distributive property to get this. And in order to solve for x, we now need to divide by a minus c. So our overall answer, x equals d minus b divided by a minus c. This looks really, really foreign, and I apologize for my handwriting. That probably doesn't help it at all. But what we did is now we can plug in numbers for D, B, A, and C, and we could find what x is every single time. So exercise 6, which of the following solves this equation for terms of A, K, and H? So that means A, K, and H will be in the answer. So we need to solve for x. So the very first thing we need to do is distributive property. So ax minus k equals 3x plus 3h. And now we need to get the x's to the same side. So subtract 3x from each side, and I have ax minus 3x minus k equals 3h. Then we're going to add k to both sides. So ax minus 3x equals 3h plus k. Remember that both of these have an x in it. So x can come out and we're left with a minus 3 equals 3h plus k. Divide by a minus 3. And we have x equals, see, this one has a minus 3 And it also has 3h plus k, so 1 has to be the correct answer.